Hello ladies and gentlemen, Top Hat Gaming Man here. A couple of days ago on my channel I released a little tongue-in-cheek video about the PlayStation 2 and comically named it How the PlayStation 2 Ruined Everything. Whilst obviously there is a lot of hyperbole around my naming choice of that video, there is a lot of truth to it too. I didn't really enjoy the 6th generation of consoles that much at the time. I would say previously I had enjoyed every generation of consoles more than I did the Gamecube, the PS2 and the original Xbox at the time. At first I thought maybe this was because I was 16 years old at the time, so I was starting to grow up and I just didn't like the direction gaming was going in. Everything seemed to be becoming darker, greyer and more depressing in games. Like all the games that was coming to the forefront was stuff like GTA, first person shooters, you know, all the stuff what's popular now. It was pretty much the birth of what we like to call now core gaming. Basically the time period where console manufacturers started to cast the net further than ever before to try and get a wider demographic as possible. Because sadly, if you're looking for a large demographic, you've got to go as lowbrow as possible when it comes to anything in popular culture, really. That's how you're going to get the sales numbers in. Let's look at anything. Pop music. It's no different, is it? Look at all the biggest budget films that appear at the cinema. Like, normally the ones that do best are literally stuff that's manufactured to sell well, rather than be good products specifically. So obviously say that's always been done with consoles, but with the PS2 and Xbox specifically, that seemed to come to the forefront more than any other. Now you may ask me, okay, but the Gamecube, that was a bit different, wasn't it? It just continued to push Nintendo products, a lot of the same franchises in which Nintendo had pushed previously. My gripe with the Gamecube is for some reason I just didn't seem to get as much enjoyment out of the big name Gamecube games in which I did with even the Nintendo 64 previously. And I don't even believe the Nintendo 64 was anywhere close to as good as the Super Nintendo before that. Like, take Mario 64, then take Mario Sunshine. I enjoyed Mario 64 like a hell of a lot more. It just seems like a more solid, more fun game where with Mario Sunshine they chucked in unnecessary, unwanted mechanics such as that stupid water gun in a Mario game and all complete rubbish like that, and storylines as well. That was a bit odd, wasn't it? That weird story where he was persecuted and had to go to prison and stuff. Strange, very strange game. And then we had Zelda as well. I will say I was a massive fan of the new cel-shaded graphics at the time in Wind Waker. I know a lot of my friends were reeing about it at the time because they wanted everything in gaming to be dark, grey and depressing, which is why they went the direction they did with Twilight Princess down the line. But I really liked the art direction of Wind Waker. However, the game itself, it seemed very short and very easy in comparison to the experiences I got with Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Those two games just felt bigger, like there was just more stuff to do and explore in general, whereas Wind Waker, it felt to me that most of it was just empty seas, and I didn't like all that sea in the game. Also, so we've gone through Zelda, we've gone through Mario, obviously Pokemon, that's the other big franchise as well. Pokemon Stadium and Pokemon Stadium 2, obviously Pokemon Stadium 2 and Stadium 3 in Japan I believe, but anyway, the two Pokemon Stadium games we got in the West, there was very good expansions to complement the Game Boy entries in the series. Pokemon Colosseum on the other hand, although it did have a great little story mode in the game, the actual interaction you could have between the handheld counterpart and the game itself wasn't even close on the Gamecube to what we could get on the 64. Like, I couldn't play Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire at 3 times speed or anything like that. There was just so many cool features and all the mini games as well. No bloody mini games in Pokemon Colosseum. But anyway, I'm rambling far too much about the Gamecube, but I'll just compliment it quickly to stop people getting too angry with me in the comment section. There are a few games that I did feel really pushed it, which I did get a lot of enjoyment out at the time, such as Pikmin, for example. That was completely new at the time. I hadn't played a game like Pikmin, so that one blew my socks off. And the other one, obviously, Super Smash Bros. Meal as well. Super Smash Bros. Meal, I feel that game far exceeded what we could get on the Nintendo 64. at the time in terms of Smash. So yes, that's probably my summary of what I enjoyed and what I didn't enjoy about the GameCube at the time, and the reason why I didn't enjoy the PS2 and the Xbox, because they just started to get very core, and Microsoft and Sony have seemed to maintain that direction up until this day. So whilst I wasn't getting superior experiences over that generation in the console department at the time, I felt in the handheld department I was being dealt a very good hand indeed. I really adored the Game Boy Advance. Such a lovely console. Like, for some reason, Nintendo, they really held back when it came to handhelds for an extremely long time. Like, we was playing on 8-bit gaming devices into the 2000s. Like, how audacious is that? Like, come on, 8-bit games into the 2000s. Like, that's slow progression, isn't it? But until we got to, I believe, 2001, and finally Nintendo released a 32-bit handheld for us to play, and my god was it worth the wait. What a beautiful system with a great battery life to boot as well. And when you left it a little bit longer and got to 2003, you got one of my favourite handhelds of all time. So we went from this, the Game Boy Advance, to the Game Boy Advance SP. So this thing had a bloody backlight as well. So essentially it could do everything the Game Gear could do many years prior, but the battery actually worked and it was genuinely portable. How amazing was that? It was just amazing. Such a good handheld. Oh, also as well, no batteries at all. That was really amazing. Instead you charged it up like a mobile phone. That was revolutionary for me at the time, not having to stock up on bloody batteries all the time. To be able to physically charge it up, play it again, then just take it home again, charge it up again. So good. Amazing. So yeah, the consoles wasn't doing much for me at the time, but this thing, wow. Also, over this period, like I said, because I was a youngster, I was in college perhaps 9 months of the year, and the other 3 months of the year I would spend working over in Greece for summer seasons at a time. So this was essentially the perfect travel companion for myself, so I could still continue to game and work and party all simultaneously. Like in 2004, I believe, I was staying in a workers block with loads of other British workers who was working in a Greek resort, and they all absolutely adored this thing as well. I was the only one who owned one, but this used to get passed around from room to room in my block, like literally on a daily basis. Like, this essentially became a communal Game Boy Advance SP, what was being shared between about 12 lads who would all play a little bit on their downtime. Like, we'd play stuff like WarioWare Inc., which again is still one of my favourite games to this day. Like, such a fresh concept at the time. Like, I hadn't personally played a game like it, so WarioWare, beautiful fun game, and so original. Also with this thing, we had 2D bloody graphics. For some reason, within consoles at the time, they wasn't giving us 2D games anymore. Nearly everything they was pumping out was of the same genre and same style graphically. Nearly everything was just those ugly 3D polygons which big companies wanted to ram down our throat. And even at the time, I remember looking at it and thinking, these graphics look absolutely awful. And I know graphics aren't everything, obviously, but a bit of eye candy is nice here and there, isn't it? Yeah. Also on this, you had a lot of good 2D Sega games as well, such as the Sonic Advance series. I really enjoyed the Sonic Advance series. I know a lot of people say they don't, but personally, I got more enjoyment out of the Sonic Advance games than perhaps the Mega Drive entries, which I didn't get to play in full until I was already a man. So I prefer the Sonic Advance games to the original Sonic games, as blasphemous as that may sound to Sega fans in particular. Also, you had Gunstar Superheroes as well, an extremely adequate sequel to Gunstar Heroes, again on the Mega Drive. Very strong game. And you've even got Advanced Guardian Heroes as well, the sequel to Guardian Heroes on the Sega Saturn. And personally, I really like that one as well. Again, quite a controversial entry because most people prefer the Saturn counterpart, but I do really like the one on the Game Boy Advance as well. Great little game. I suppose in terms of things that did let me down about this platform was the constant re-releasing of Mario games. So we got 4 2D side-scrolling Mario games on it at the time, which I believe was Super Mario Bros. 2, followed by World, followed by Yoshi's Island, followed by Mario Bros. 3, named Mario Advance, Mario Advance 2, Mario Advance 3 and Mario Advance 4. It was sad to me at the time that they didn't choose to release a new 2D Mario side-scroller, because that was the game I really wanted on this device. Like, they released bloody 3 on the Game Boy, well, 2 if you don't include Wario. So why did they just give us old SNES games? I would have preferred to have got completely new Mario games. They did do some updates on the game, particularly the early one, which was the first Mario Advance game. But as they went through from Mario Advance to Mario Advance, each one became less advanced than the next, with less additional features included, which was a bit sad. Also, you had Link to the Past on this thing, so people who didn't have the Super Nintendo necessarily could play Link to the Past. Not particularly that exciting for myself at the time, but we did get Minish Cap a little bit later on, which again, very decent 2D Zelda game, definitely worth a play. Then you had Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, which we briefly touched upon in this video. Personally, I didn't think they was as good as Gold and Silver or Red and Blue at the time, simply because your Pokedex only went up to 200. And there was 386 of the little buggers in existence. So no Squirtle, no Charmander, no Bulbasaur in a Pokemon game. What the bloody hell was that all about? However, that was soon resolved, because later we got Fire Red and Leaf Green, which was enhanced remakes of the Game Boy Advance, of the original Game Boy versions of Pokemon, which they were amazing. Can't deny it. Bloody loved those. Like, the original Pokemon games are some of my favourite games of all time. So to get a enhanced remake so early was actually, it was lovely, because they actually put effort into the remake. It wasn't like what they did with the Mario games, where they literally just shit out the same game on a different platform. They actually gave us complete fresh remakes, which is one of the things that makes me a bit sad about the Nintendo Switch actually. Like, for some reason they're just re-releasing the Wii U games, and morons are paying out a premium for them when they could just buy them on the Wii U for 1/3 of the price. But that's a complaint I've gone over many times in these videos. So we're bigging up the Game Boy Advance anyway, so I'll try and avoid the negativity a little bit. Also, we had Mario Kart Super Circuit. I got a bloody ton of enjoyment out of that one. It felt like to me at the time that that was by far the most content they had ever put in a Mario Kart game. You had more tracks in that game than any Mario Kart game I'd ever seen before. And they even included some of the older tracks from, like, the one on the Nintendo 64 and the one on Super Nintendo. So we was getting some Super Nintendo nostalgia in a new game when the Super Nintendo was still quite young itself, I suppose. So that was a nice touch, because it wasn't something I was used to seeing at the time. Obviously, going over to the Gamecube again, we got Double Dash, and I didn't like Double Dash quite as much as the Game Boy Advance entry of Mario Kart. Again, another reason why I felt a little bit let down by what I was getting on the Gamecube at the time. WarioWare again, we got WarioWare Twisted. Again, have I got it around here somewhere? It's here somewhere, but I can't see it. Oh, there it is. Yes, WarioWare Twisted. This little bugger's got motion controls in it. So, as you play it, you can move it like a Nintendo Wii, before there was even a Wii in existence. So, that's another cool one. Also, Mother 3, Japan exclusive, which people are still reading about not being released all the way up to this day in the West. However, who gives a crap about a Western release? You can literally go on eBay, buy it for £5. Some clever people have made a translation of the game, a very, very good translation of the game, which I've played on this very device. So if Nintendo don't want to bother releasing it, you can still play it. You don't have to wait for Nintendo to give them your money, especially on the Game Boy Advance. They're never going to release an English version on the Game Boy Advance, are they? So you're never going to get a true Mother 3 experience unless you buy a reproduction cartridge, sadly. That's the only way you're ever going to play Mother 3 how it was supposed to be experienced. So, also, we're still talking about games. So many games on the thing. We got introduced in the West to Advance Wars, which saw 2 entries, and Fire Emblem, which also received multiple entries. 2 absolutely amazing strategy RPGs, and absolutely perfect games to experience whilst gaming on the go. Like I said, really, really strong. Basically, at the time, I suppose they reminded me of chess on steroids, being the first tactical role-playing games I'd ever played. However, I will say I've always preferred Advance Wars over Fire Emblem, I suppose, because maybe tanks and guns are probably a little bit more Western than waifus and anime, perhaps. So yes, as you can hear from me, so many fond memories with the Game Boy Advance, and such an amazing travel companion for myself. Like I said, so many fond memories of the platform. Far more love for this thing than I will ever have with any of the 6th generation actual living room consoles. So ladies and gentlemen, let me know in the comment section about some of your experiences with the Game Boy Advance during its actual life cycle. I'd be curious to hear from you what you think. Do you believe that the Game Boy Advance is better than its living room console counterparts at the time? Because I think there's a very strong case for it being true. As I said, this stood out far more, as it was the only device offering a plethora of amazing 2D games, which the consoles just didn't seem to be capable of at the time. So yes, Game Boy Advance, I love you. Yeah. Cheerio.
Born in London in 86, a Sasho gent named Richard Parliament. He loves to wrestle, but he loves one more thing: handhelds round the world. He fights in his comments and he argues with fans. It's a problem no one understands. If there's 2 things he loves, it's getting at handhelds round the world. Drinking fine wine, fighting fanboys, handhelds round the world.
Top Hat Gaming Man.